Hola a todos, soy Javier Poveda y esto es De Bien TV, el canal en el que te lo vas a pasar de bien mientras aprendes geografía, historia del arte y este año un poquito de economía y de empresariales. Este vídeo va dirigido a mis alumnos de cuarto de la ESO de sección del CEIPSO Encinar de Torrelodones. In this video we are going to continue studying the Unit 3. In this case, the part 2, the bourgeois revolutions in the 19th century and the unifications of Germany and Italy. So, let's jump to the presentation with our magic. Here we are, and let's start with this second part. So, in the last video, we studied the ideas of liberalism, nationalism, and democracy. And these ideas are going to be very present, are going to be the protagonist of these revolutions and of the unifications. So the bourgeois revolutions were the three main bourgeois revolutions happened in the years 1820, 1830 and 1848. We are going to study the locations in which they were successful. We are going to start with the revolutions of 1820. First, in Spain and Portugal, there were liberal revolutions that succeeded and they succeeded to establish constitutional monarchies. In Portugal, they wrote a new constitution and they forced the royal family to come back from Brazil, in which they were, or where they were living since the Napoleonic invasion of 1808. In Spain, the constitution of 1812 was reestablished for 3 years until the year 1823, after the pronunciamiento of the commander Rafael de Riego. But we will study this more deeply in the third part of this unit. Finally, in Greece, which territory was part of the Ottoman Empire, started an independence war in 1821, and they managed to get the support of the great powers of Europe, such as Russia, Great Britain, or France, and finally the Ottomans recognized their independence after the Treaty of Adrianopolis in 1829. Here we have a couple of pictures. First, the meeting of the Cortes of the Portuguese nation in 1820. They were the ones who wrote the constitution. And on your right, the rising of the Peloponnese. This is a region of southern Greece, which started the Greek independence war. At first, they managed to achieve their independence, but only the southern part of the Greek territory. They will expand their territory throughout the 19th century. The first Greek king was Otto I, which was a German prince. Then the revolutions of 1830. They were successful in Belgium and in France. Belgium was part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. We saw that after the Congress of Vienna, and the Belgians wanted independence from Holland. Finally, after a nationalist and liberal revolution in 1830, Belgium got its independence, and Leopold I, which was also a German prince, became Belgium's first constitutional monarch until today. Okay, they are the Kingdom of Belgium is the successor of this. Well, all the kings of Belgium have been the successors of Leopold I of Belgium. And in France, we have to know first what happened after the Restoration. After the Congress of Vienna, the Bourbons returned to the throne, first in the person of Louis XVI, which was the brother of Louis XVIII, which was the brother of Louis XVI, the king of the French Revolution. And after him, since he had no children, Charles X rose to the throne. And this revolution started when Charles III, the 10th, oh my god, I cannot talk in English. Charles X approved several absolutist decrees, such as the restriction of the press freedom. So he was forced to abdicate. And after that, the assembly voted for a new king and they chose Louis Philippe of Orleans, which reigned as Louis Philippe I, and he ruled as a constitutional monarch until the next revolution, the Revolution of 1848. Here you have some pictures of the Belgian Revolution and the territory that was divided. This was the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and this territory of modern Belgium was the one who formed, or that formed, the kingdom, the newly Kingdom of Belgium. And these are the three kings of France in the 19th century: Louis XVIII, Charles X, and Louis Philippe I. And here you have the very famous painting of La liberté guidant le peuple, the liberty guiding the people, la libertad guiando al pueblo, from by Eugène Delacroix. This painting is usually associated to the French Revolution, but not. This was painted, this is depicting the Revolution of 1830. Finally, the last revolution is the revolutions of 1848. They were only successful in France, and this revolution was, well, the main political actors of this revolution was the petite bourgeoisie and the workers, because they advocated democratic principles that would give them access to political power. They wanted universal manhood suffrage. So in France, they revolted and they were successful. They secured democratic objectives and they achieved the universal manhood suffrage. After the abdication of Louis Philippe I, the Second Republic was proclaimed, and Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, which was the nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte, was elected its first president. But 4 years later he staged a coup and proclaimed himself emperor, and here the Second French Empire began. And this was made in the year 1852. He ruled as Napoleon III until 1870, when he was defeated in the French-Prussian War, that we will study when we see the unification of Germany. This is the proclamation of the Second Republic of France and the barricades in Paris. Note that here we have the first photographs of our course, okay? Here, that because the photographs were invented around a decade earlier. And after that we have to study the Italian and German unification. These two territories were divided in numerous states, but there was a unification nationalist movement that will end in the formation of the kingdoms, or the Kingdom of Italy and the Reich of Germany, the Empire of Germany. Let's see how they did it. First, we are going to talk about the Italian unification. It started in 1859 and ended in 1870. First, as we know, the Congress of Vienna left the Italian peninsula divided into 7 states. Some of them were under Austrian control. For example, the Kingdom of Lombardy-Venetia was under the Austrian control, as well as the duchies of Parma, Modena and Tuscany. The Papal States were controlled by the Pope. In the Kingdom of the two Sicilies were ruled by the Bourbons, and the Kingdom of Sardinia, or the Kingdom of Piedmont-Sardinia, was ruled by the Savoy dynasty. And this kingdom is the one who is going to start the unification. The king of Sardinia, of Piedmont-Sardinia, was Victor Emmanuel II, Victor Manuel II, and he had the aid of his prime minister, which was the Count of Cavour, El Conde Cavour. And they tried to extend their kingdom's constitutional monarchy, because the Kingdom of Sardinia was a constitutional monarchy, to other parts of Italy. It started in 1859 when the Piedmontese had a war had a war versus or against the Austrians for this territory, with the support of Napoleon III. They won the Austrians in the battles of Magenta and Solferino. After that, they annexed the Lombardy, which is this half of the kingdom of Lombardy-Venetia, which capital was Milan, and also after some plebiscites, the duchies of Parma, Modena, and Tuscany on the following year. Regarding the south, there was an expedition led by Giuseppe Garibaldi, who was a military and political leader of the Kingdom of Sardinia, with only 1,000 volunteers. That's what it is called, the Expedizione del Mille, the expedition of the south of the 1,000. That they landed in Sicily with just 1,000 of volunteers, and they finally conquered all of this kingdom of the two Sicilies in the year of 1860. After that, after they had the kingdom had all of the south and the center of Italy, they aimed for the kingdom of Venetia under Austrian control, and they got it after the 7 Weeks War that we will study now when we talk about the German unification, because of their support for the Prussians. Okay, they supported the Prussians in their war against the Austrians, so they got the kingdom of Venetia. And finally, the last state left for completing the Italian unification was the Papal States, this time only limited to Rome, and they conquered it in the year 1870. Okay, finally, at the end, Italy became a parliamentary monarchy with Victor Emmanuel II as the king, and its capital was located in Rome after its conquest. Okay, let's see it here like this. Here in this map you have the dates in which the territories were conquered. Okay, here you have a map in Spanish because I couldn't find a better map in English. They started here in these yellow territories. First, after the war against the Austrians in 1859, they got the Lombardy. Later, in 1860, after some plebiscites, they managed to annex the central areas of Italy, and after the expedition of the 1,000 of Garibaldi, the kingdom of the two Sicilies. Finally, the Papal States were annexed in the year 1870. In exchange of the support of the French troops by Napoleon III, the kingdom had to cede Savoy and Nice to France in the year 1860. These are Victor Emmanuel II, Camillo Benso, which is the Count of Cavour, the Prime Minister, and Giuseppe Garibaldi, the man who led the expedition to the kingdom of the two Sicilies. Here we have Napoleon III here on riding the horse, commanding the French troops at Solferino. Here the Battle of Calatafimi, between Garibaldi's red shirts, los camisas rojas de Garibaldi. This was the name of the 1,000 volunteers of Garibaldi that went to conquer the kingdom of the two Sicilies. Here is Garibaldi entering Naples, and the people are acclaiming him and all carrying Italian the Italian kingdom flags. Vittorio Emanuele II entering Venice in 1866, and finally the Italian troops sacking Rome in 1870. And now we have to talk about the German unification, which started in 1866 and finished in 1861. So after the Congress of Vienna, there was a German Confederation divided into 39 states, as we know, and they were united by the Federal Diet, which is the German word for parliament, which also was dominated by Austria. After that, at first in 1834, they established a customs union, una unión aduanera, which was called the Zollverein. And this economic union was the starting point of the political union. And there was a main character in this unification, which was the god Otto von Bismarck, this guy over here, which was named Chancellor, the Prime Minister, the equivalent to the title of, or the charge of Prime Minister of Prussia, and Prussia was the kingdom that started the process of unification. Why? Because the nationalism of Prussia was really strong and they have a very powerful army. First, Bismarck expelled the Austrians from the German Confederation after the 7 Weeks' War of 1866, mostly after the Battle of Sarawak. We have talked about this war in the Italian unification. When the Italians annexed the Kingdom of Venetia, it was because of their help to the Prussians against the Austrians in this 7 Weeks' war. The result of this war was a new confederation with just the northern German states, which is called the North German Confederation, led by Prussia. And in the second phase, Bismarck defeated Napoleon III of France because Napoleon III declared war on the Prussians, and Bismarck used this on his advantage because he managed to unify all the German states after the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 or 18, well, it really ended in 1871, but in this year the war was already won. Because France wanted to limit the Prussian expansion. Well, the causes were very complex, but for this explanation it's enough. Prussia annexed Alsace and Lorraine, which are the eastern regions of France, and after that the German princes of all the rest of the states decided to unite with Prussia. So in the next year, the year of 1871, Germany became the Second Reich, the Second Empire, and the unification process ended. It is called the Second Reich because the First Reich was the Holy Roman Empire. Berlin became the capital, and Wilhelm I, Guillermo I, became the Kaiser, the Emperor. So let's see this with a map because it's easier. Here you have the German Confederation that resulted from the Vienna Congress, or the Congress of Vienna, this red line, okay? And these states in blue, the state in blue is Prussia, this, and this is Austria, okay? Part of Austria and Prussia. And these states also formed a sovereign in 1834, and after the 7 Weeks' War in 1866, the Prussians formed this new confederation, which is called the Northern German Confederation, okay? And they expelled the Austrians, which are here, from this confederation. So Prussia led this new, not state, but this new political entity, okay? This is the Battle of Sarawak, the main battle of the 7 Weeks' War in 1866. And this is Bismarck and Napoleon III after the capture of the latest and the Battle of Sedan. The Battle of Sedan in 1870 was the main battle of the French-Prussian War, and Napoleon III was caught in this battle because he was leading his troops. And this precipitated the defeat of the French troops, of the French army. After that, the Prussians entered in Paris. Here, this is a military parade in Paris, and after a brief siege against the Commune de Paris, la Comuna de París. So, this is the map of Europe in 1871. We have the Second Reich, the German Empire, with all the German states unified. Okay, in the German Empire, Austria was out of this German Empire, and this is the regions. These are the regions of Alsace and Lorraine, which were annexed by the German Empire and taken from the newly Republic of France, the Third Republic of France. Here we have the Kingdom of Italy, also unified with all of this, with the capital Rome, which was moved there, I mean, in the previous year, in 1870. And this is the end with the proclamation of the Prussian king Wilhelm I as the German Kaiser, and it was made in the Hall of Mirrors, which is the most beautiful hall or room in the Palace of Versailles in Paris. Ups. O sea que hasta aquí hemos llegado. Esto es todo. Espero que os haya ayudado este vídeo infame que he hecho para entender un poquito mejor el tema, y como siempre, para cualquier tipo de duda, por el aula virtual, por el correo o incluso por el Instagram, que si no me sigues todavía no sé a qué esperas. Como siempre, nos vamos a despedir con una frase, a ver si la dislexia me da, aquí está, que dice: Qui si fa l'Italia o si muore. Es una frase que dijo Garibaldi a uno de sus lugartenientes de la expedición de los 1000, que le expresó sus dudas de, joder, con 1000 tíos vamos a ir a conquistar el reino de las dos Sicilias. Y Garibaldi, que los tenía enormes, le dijo: aquí se viene a hacer Italia o se viene a morir. Muchas gracias por ver el vídeo y nos vemos en el próximo.